Welcome to the Strategy of the Week presentation for the 31st of May, 2013. My name is Todd Shaffer. I'm the Manager of Research for VectorVest, and I'll be providing your strategy presentation this evening. Tonight our presentation is titled Making Money with Industry Leaders. Its genesis was our presentation of 2 weeks ago by Mr. Kevin Crow, Cherry Picking with Industry Leaders. Kevin demonstrated a simple and effective way to cherry pick top-performing stocks in top-performing industries on confirmed up calls. Tonight I'll demonstrate how to automate much of that process, but more than that, we'll also discuss the creative use of our sector and industry analysis. Dr. DeLito wrote an essay in the Views from the 12th of August 2005. It was titled Industry Group and Business Sector RT Analysis. There's an old saying that birds of a feather flock together, and so it is with stocks. Stocks of companies in the same business have similar characteristics and experience the same market forces as their direct competitors. Therefore, the prices of stocks in common industries or businesses tend to rise and fall together. Of course, some stocks will perform better than others, but logic says one should own stocks in rising industry groups and business sectors, and sell those in falling industry groups and business sectors. This is extraordinarily easy to do with VectorVest, since we rank every industry group and business sector by relative timing, or RT. And this approach or technique can be particularly effective in the Australian market, where much of the market's activity can be focused in just a few sectors. To demonstrate this concept, let's take a look at the top RT industry. I'm going to move into the program, and from the home page we'll come up to the Viewers tab, and we'll select, right below Stock Viewer, we have Industry Viewer. VectorVest segments the Australian stock market into 28 industries and into 12 sectors. So sectors will have multiple industries. We're looking at the industry breakdown, and we note the default sort when we looked at industries and sectors is by RT descending. And that's because the most important consideration when we're looking at industries and sectors is the price trend of the industry or sector. We recognize that shares with very weak fundamentals may be getting carried along for the ride. I would also have you notice, if I minimize the viewer toolbar here, that each of the industries has internal metrics just as every stock does. So the values here represent the average values for all the stocks within that industry. So the average RT for all the stocks in the financials insurance industry is 1.26. And of course, we're analyzing this data at the end of May, where we've just experienced a strong pullback in the market. But I'll also have you note right here at the bottom, we also list the VectorVest composite. We know the VectorVest composite is the average of all the stocks in the database, and so this is representing the market. So all the industries that are above the VectorVest composite in RT rank are outperforming the broad market. To demonstrate the strength of this approach, let's start with our top RT industry, financials insurance. I'm going to right click on the industry and I'm going to view the stocks in the industry group. Notice there are 7 stocks in this industry group. They're sorted. Again, I've got a list of stocks, so our default sort is by VST. But notice how many sell recommendations there aren't. Right? There are no sell recommended stocks. All the stocks in this group are still in uptrends, even though the market's in correction, and Tower Limited and QBE has some shaky fundamentals. Of course, if we were buying stocks, we'd be buying the stocks with the good fundamentals at the top of the list, right? Let's try this again with the second ranked industry, telecom services. We'll right click, stocks in the industry group. Much broader industry, we have 22 stocks in this industry group. We do have 2 sell recommended stocks out of 22. And again, the market is in a pullback here. We sort by RT. The majority, except for 4, are in uptrends. And again, if I look at the internals of RVNRS for the fundamental strengths of the companies, I see a lot of companies here with weak fundamentals that are being pulled along for the ride. And that's why we advocate that not only do we want to buy rising stocks, but we'd like for them to be in rising industries in those rising markets. It just puts the odds in your favor another step along the way. Now there's one other metric that I'd like to point out that VectorVest provides with this industry and sector analysis. If we scroll all the way to the right, and of course you can reset this in your layout wherever you like, If you scroll all the way to the right, you see the RT ranking. Every day we record the rank position of every industry and sector 1 through 28. This ranking can be very useful as an adjunct to the RT rank itself. Imagine in a rising market where the majority of industries are rising and their RT values are rising. We can now analyze which are rising into or falling out of the top 10. We can see which are accelerating faster by virtue of their rising rank, or conversely, which are getting left behind by their falling rank. And I'll show you how we can find that easily in the Unisearch tool later in this presentation. But again, this RT ranking is available for both industries and sectors. Of course, we can also analyze that movement using graphs, as we can with all of the indicators and parameters that are available for the industries and stocks themselves. And of course, the place to perform that graph analysis is with the graphing tool. So let's take our graphing tool and let's graph the top 10 industries. And what do we look for? We look for the same things we look for in a stock graph. Smooth, steady price action, bottom left to upper right. An upward sloping moving average. RT hitting higher highs as price increases. And so things we want to watch out for are things like bearish divergences where the RT is hitting lower highs while price is still moving forward. Let's add RT rank to our graph. We're going to add a parameter. Capital appreciation, RT ranking. Dr. DeLito has given us previous guidance that we want to look for stocks that are rising into or falling out of the top quarter. And so to keep that easy, I'll call this the top 10. And we can see the insurance industry came into the top 10 here in June and has really been a top performer ever since. So when doing this industry analysis, it's very easy, just like a stock graph, is roll through the graphs and what kind of gut reaction do you have. The ETFs, a lot of volatility in that movement, right? We're not smooth bottom left, upper right. Now, of course, with the market pullback, the industry has pulled back too. I can understand that. Nice little warning flag you got here when the price pulled back below that moving average. But these are the same kinds of things you look for in a stock graph. Remember, in the end, we're trying to buy rising stocks in rising industries and rising markets. And the market, by virtue of its performance, is telling us what's in favor. Kevin had identified several criteria he likes to use for his cherry-picking technique. And these were his criteria, and so he'd go to the industry viewer, click on the top industry that wasn't an index or ETF industry, and he'd cherry pick for the stocks in rank VST order. And he'd select the first stock that met all these criteria. First, the price must be greater than $5. The average volume has to be greater than or equal to 50,000 shares. RV, RS, and RT must all be above 1. The share must be rated as a buy or a hold, no sells. Earnings growth has to be greater than or equal to 10%. No indexes or ETFs. And he's going to select one stock from each of the top 5 industries. The one aspect I won't be able to replicate is the cherry-picking aspect of looking at both the stock and the industry graphs. But one of my goals for tonight's presentation is to show you how to automate much of this routine to reduce your workload and help you find good candidates more quickly and more easily, and also explore the use of some of the empirical tools available with VectorVest. So let's begin by translating some of these search criteria into the Unisearch tool. Here we are in Unisearch, and I've created a Strategy of the Week group at the top of the list. I've pre-built, in the interest of saving time, the base parameters of Kevin's search criteria. So let's quickly review. Here we have the stock's actual price needs to be greater than or equal to 5. Average volume greater than or equal to 50,000 shares. RV, RS, and RT all greater than 1. Stock recommendation is not a sell, which means it has to be a buy or hold. Stock growth rate is greater than or equal to 10%. And the industry group is not market ETFs or indices. The last piece of the puzzle, the last criteria we need to add, is the filter that's going to help us identify the top 5 industries on the date of the search. Now the easiest, most straightforward way to do that would simply be to click in the parameter box, hover on Stocks, hover on Filtered By, left click on Industry Group. That industry group needs to equal, if I click in the value box, I can use a selected industry where I check specific industries off. I'm going to sorted industry groups either by RT or by VST, and I'm going to select the top 5 by RT. Something to think about here is if market ETFs and market indices were both in the top 5 ranking, you'd only select stocks from the top 3 industries because we've asked the search to eliminate those 2 industry groups. So I could, if I wanted to get a little tricky here, I could make this be the top 7 by RT or use the top 10 just to accommodate that kind of situation. And it does happen. Remember, in the viewer that we just looked at, the ETFs were the 4th ranked industry. But let's take a moment to think about some other ways we can look for leading industry groups. And you can pick up some clues in the Unisearch tool just by looking at the search groups that include industries and sectors. So when we look for delta searches for industries, a delta is a magnitude of change, if you will, of any indicator. So here we're saying let's look for industries that have had the biggest 10-day upward price change. Or let's look at the industries that have had the biggest upward change in RT over the past 10 days. And of course, you don't have to limit that delta to just price and RT. You can look for deltas on the CI. You could look for a delta on the industry rank. One thing I'd have you remember is that as the industries rise in rank, their number falls. So the number 1 is lower than the number 10. So that would be indicative of a negative move, if you will, numerically. In other words, moving from the 10th position up to the 9th is actually a 10% reduction in rank. But what this gets us to is the place where we can look for these leading industries in 2 ways. The high flyers, the industries that are already exhibiting leadership, or the movers and the shakers, which is what we call the industries that are moving up in rank, that are gaining strength. It's a little more aggressive because, of course, not every rising industry rises all the way to the top. But let's take a look at some of the other ways we can analyze industry rank and movement. We'll close our delta searches, and the next thing I see are high-low searches. High-low searches are pretty straightforward. We're simply looking for a new price high or price low for the industry over different intervals in time. Obviously a great indication of rising industry price. And finally, let's scroll down to the trends section. I've highlighted trends, persistent trends. If I click on that, we find a search called persistently rising industries. If I click on that, we're looking now for an industry price that is trending higher for the past 3 weeks. I'm going to click on this value box. When we specify trends, if I click on the custom box, what we're doing is represented by this custom trend template. Trends can be defined, and trends are pattern recognitions or patterns. We can look at intervals of both days and weeks. Here we're looking at a weekly trend. Week 1 is current. So as we go back historically then, we can go back 10 weeks. And so this particular trend is saying, I don't care what happened to the industry's price over the past week 10 through week 4, but in the last 3 weeks, on Friday, I wanted the price to be higher over the last 3 Fridays. Well, of course, there are a lot of ways you could use this tool. For instance, instead of looking at the industry's price, what if we said we wanted to look at the industry's RT value? And that RT, instead of just trending higher or lower, we'll go to custom, and we'll say last week the industry RT value was less than 1. But this week the RT value has crossed above 1. This would let you find then any industries that have just had an RT crossover from below 1, downtrend, into uptrend with an RT value above 1. Or maybe I just want the RT value to have been rising over the last 3 weeks. So I could just put a plus in each square. Or using our newfound tool, what if we use the industry's RT rank, and we want an industry that's been in the top 10 for the last 3 weeks. So remember, I would use a less than 10 for each week, because the rank 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 are all lower numbers than 10. And just for grins, let's run that search and see if that's what we found. Here's our list, and that looks pretty close to what we saw in the industry viewer. If we graph them quickly, we can see their industry rank. And I'll move our date bar back 3 weeks. And we can see as we scroll through, they've all been above 10 for the past 3 weeks. So you get the idea. So a lot of creative, powerful ways that you can use this industry information and use the Unisearch tool to help you identify the industries and the stocks in those industries that are exhibiting specific behaviors. And of course, it occurs to me, I also could have created a trend where the RT ranking was just going lower on a weekly basis over the last 3 weeks, so that I could look for industries that had improved their positions over the past 3 weeks. So that's some of the theory behind the tools that are available to you in VectorVest. And that's one of the reasons, by the way, we call it the most powerful search engine ever created by man, because you have that kind of power. But I'm the manager of research, and ultimately it comes down to results. So for me, the acid test is, can we get close to Kevin's performance? Let's scroll back up to that Strategy of the Week group and the cherry picking industry leaders search that we built originally. What I'm going to do next is we'll use this search to look for stocks on the same day as Kevin's original test. But I'm going to use also the portfolio manager to help me build the industry diversification, the one stock per industry that's required with Kevin's technique. So let's first set the benchmark by reviewing Kevin's original performance. So if we go back to the Viewers tab, I'll open up the Viewers window, and I still have the Aussie watch list that Kevin built from the 19th of December. And what he did was we set our date back to that time frame. The 19th was a confirmed up call. And what Kevin did was these were the 5 stocks that he cherry picked using his methodology. And if we quick test it to current, we see even with the market pullback here, we've produced a 27.35% gain. And I don't even know how many times better that is than the market's 0.69% gain in the same time frame. So that's our benchmark. Let's minimize this and move over to the portfolio manager. In the portfolio manager, we'll click New, and we'll give it a name. Let's call this Cherry Picking with Industry Leaders. And we'll leave our default set. I'll click OK. That creates the portfolio. If I click on that portfolio, we can see that it opens up and it's empty. There are no stocks. If we open up the graph window, there is no equity here. We're just sitting there at 25,000. And the reason I came here is because with the Manage Portfolio function now, I can do a buy from search. This will allow me to specify the maximum stocks per industry at 1. Let's choose our cherry picking industry leaders search that we wrote back in the Unisearch tool. And we're going to limit our portfolio to 5 positions. We've checked no duplicates, and we're going to use the current day's closing price from Kevin's inception date, which was 19 December. And when we click Buy Stocks, we'll go out, we'll run the search on that date, and we'll just run it forward in time. And you can see that we have a 30% gain here, but notice we only found 3 shares in that search return because the ETF's industry that we eliminated was in the top 5 industries. And so, of course, this is something you need to think about how you want to handle it. For me, I think the most practical solution is to just include more industries so that when you eliminate 2, you'll still know that you have 5 industries. So let's go back to the Unisearch tool. And instead of limiting myself to the top 5 industries by RT, I'm going to come down to the Custom button and change it to 7 industries by RT. And let's save this as cherry picking 7 industries. I'm saving it in the strategy group again. Click OK. Go back to our portfolios tab. Let's create a new portfolio. We'll name this portfolio cherry picking 7 industries. I click OK. Again, with the same routine, we'll go to the buy from search. We'll choose our cherry picking 7 industries search. 1 stock per industry. A total of 5 stocks. No duplicates. Current day's close. Change our date again back to the 19th of December. Click OK, and let's buy stocks. Here we can see our performance did fall a little bit, down to 26.75% gain. All 5 shares up. Let's compare that to Kevin's result. But you'll see that's only because we paid commissions in the cherry picking portfolio here in the Quickfolio, because we have the exact same list of stocks that Kevin found with his technique. And so for me, anytime I can have the VectorVest tool get me the stocks that I'm interested in trading easier and faster, I'm all for it. And once I've set up the search, it's a simple routine of either running the Unisearch and cherry picking or coming to the portfolio manager and running the automated buy to get my industry diversified list. So I hope I've generated some ideas for you tonight on how to make money with industry leaders. And of course, while I introduce several concepts, if there are any of them that you need a little more help with, please call us in the product support department or contact us by email, and we'd be happy to help you however we can. With that, though, we'll conclude our strategy presentation this evening. Thank you for being with us, and I hope you can come back and be with us again next week. Have a good night.